India is building its first bullet train, a project expected to cost 2 lakh crore. Is it a symbol of modern India or an expensive vanity project? And honestly, both sides have valid arguments. Because when millions of Indians still travel in overcrowded trains, when railway accidents still happens, when healthcare, education and road needs investment, many people ask one simple question: why investing so much on one train? Is India's bullet train really a visionary investment? Or is it one of the most expensive mistakes India has ever made? To answer that, we first need to understand what India is actually building. What is India's bullet train project? India's first bullet train project is being built between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. This route is approximately 508 km long. The train will use Japan's famous Shinkansen technology. Once operational, it is expected to run at a speed of 350 km per hour. To understand how fast that is, today traveling between Mumbai to Ahmedabad could take you anywhere between 6 to 8 hours. The bullet train aims to reduce that journey to 2 hours, which means a businessman can attend meeting on another city and can return home on the same day. But speed alone does not explain why India is spending over 2 lakh crore. To understand that, we first need to know why countries build bullet trains in the first place. Most people think bullet trains are simply faster trains, but government doesn't just spend billions just to save few hours of travel time. Bullet trains are actually economic infrastructure projects. See, when cities become better connected, travels become faster, people spend less time traveling and more time working, meeting clients, exploring new opportunities, and growing businesses. Tourists can visit more places in less time, companies can hire talents from nearby cities more easily, and over time cities that felt apart start functioning like one larger economic region. Think about this way. A company in Mumbai get easier access to talents, customers and suppliers from Ahmedabad. The distance between the two cities doesn't physically change, but economically they become much closer. This is why developed countries investing heavily in high-speed rail. Japan, France, China, Spain, they don't see bullet train as transportation projects. They see them as economic growth projects. And this is exactly how India wants its bullet train to work. But if the benefits are so obvious, then why are so many people against it? The biggest criticism is simple: cost. The project is expected to cost more than 2 lakh crore. And for many Indians, that number is difficult to ignore. Critics argue that this money can be used somewhere else. For example, investing in existing railway stations, modernizing conventional trains, building hospitals, improving public education, developing rural infrastructure. And honestly, this argument sounds reasonable because India still faces many basic development challenges. Then comes the second criticism: who will actually use the bullet train? Many people think ticket prices could be expensive for the average traveler. If only a small percentage of people can afford it, does the project really benefit the country as a whole? And then there is another concern. Indian railway network still faces challenges like overcrowding, delays, maintenance issues, safety concerns. Critics ask why build the fastest train when many ordinary trains still need improvement. These arguments have made the project very controversial from the very beginning. But supporters believe critics are looking at the project the wrong way. The biggest mistake people make is thinking this project is only about a train. Because if this was only about moving passengers faster, the cost would indeed look expensive. But supporters argue the real goal is much bigger. The bullet train is also about building capabilities. Capabilities India currently doesn't have. For example, build trains that can run at a speed above 300 km per hour, manage thousands of train movements using advanced control system, maintain the extreme high safety standards required for bullet trains, construct world-class tracks, stations, bridges and tunnels with incredible precision. In other words, India is not only buying a train, it is trying to learn an entire ecosystem. And that changes the conversation completely. Because now the question becomes, is India buying transportation? Or is India buying future expertise? Now this is where the story becomes even more interesting. India is not building this project alone. Japan is playing a major role, and the reason goes far beyond trains. A few years earlier, Japan was competing with China to build Indonesia's high-speed rail project. Japan had the experience, technology, and the world-famous Shinkansen technology. But despite all that, China won the project. For Japan, that was a major setback. Because high-speed rail is not just a transportation project, it is a way to export your technology that you have created to other countries, build long-term partnership and secure future markets. And this is where India became extremely important. India has one of the largest railway network in the world, carrying millions of passengers every day. If high-speed rail expands across India in the future, it could become one of the biggest rail markets on the planet. Japan understood this, and that is why it offered India a deal that very few countries would ever receive. Japan agreed to finance about 81% of the Mumbai-Ahmedabad Bullet Train project, providing a loan of roughly 88,000 crore. But what made the deal extraordinary was not just the amount, it was the terms. The loan carries an interest rate of around 0.1% per year, with a repayment period of about 50 years. And India doesn't need to start to pay back the full loan immediately before major repayment begins. To put that into perspective, if India had borrowed the same amount from commercial market, the financing cost would have been dramatically higher. In simple words, Japan made the project financially possible. But Japan is not doing this as a charity. They are making a long-term strategic investment because if India's high-speed rail network expands in the future, Japanese companies could be involved in train manufacturing, signaling systems, maintenance contracts, engineering services, future rail corridors for decades, and that market would be worth far more than the first project itself. At the same time, India gains even something more valuable than funding: technology transfer. Now many people hear this term but doesn't understand what it actually means. Technology transfer doesn't mean that Japan hands over a blueprint and leaves. It means Indian engineers, technicians, and companies get decades of Japanese expertise. They learn how bullet trains are planned and designed, how they maintain an almost perfect safety record, how special tracks, stations, bridges, and tunnels are built for high-speed travel, how these trains are operated and maintained every day, and how thousands of different companies, suppliers, and technologies work together to keep the entire system running smoothly. In simple words, India is not just learning how to run a bullet train, it is learning how to build and manage an entire high-speed rail ecosystem from the ground up. And we are already starting to see the impact of this learning process. India is currently developing its own indigenous high-speed train called the B28, which is being manufactured by BEML in Bangalore. These trains are expected to operate at speeds of up to 280 km per hour and are likely to enter into service in the coming years. Now the B28 may not be as fast as Japan's most advanced Shinkansen trains, but that's not the point. The point is that India is slowly moving from simply importing technologies to building its own capabilities. Every major high-speed rail country followed a similar path. First they learned, then they localized, and eventually they built their own systems. Supporters of the bullet train project believe India is trying to do exactly the same thing, which means this project is not just about running a train between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. It is about creating the skills, expertise, and industrial ecosystem needed to build future high-speed rail systems with greater Indian participation. For Japan, it is an opportunity to secure a long-term position in one of the world's largest railway markets. For India, it is an opportunity to acquire technology, expertise, and industrial capabilities that could influence infrastructure projects for decades to come, and that is exactly why both countries are willing to make such a massive commitment. Now let's look at China, because China's story is surprisingly similar. When China started investing in high-speed rail, many people criticized the idea. Critics said it was too expensive, the country had more urgent problems, the money could be spent elsewhere. Sound familiar? But China continued anyway. Today, China has world's largest high-speed rail networks. Thousands of kilometers connect cities across the country. Travel time has reduced dramatically. Business activity increased. Regional connectivity improved. Entire economic corridor emerged around transportation networks. Now, this doesn't automatically mean India's bullet train will produce the same result. China and India are very different countries, but it does prove something important. Infrastructure projects often look expensive in the beginning because their benefit takes years to appear. Now imagine if the project succeeds. Not just operationally, economically. The train attracts passengers, businesses use it regularly, new industries emerge around the corridor, future high-speed rail routes become easier to build, and India develops expertise in advanced rail systems. In that scenario, Mumbai-Ahmedabad Bullet Train becomes much more than a train. It becomes a proof of concept, a foundation for future infrastructure projects, and perhaps the beginning of a high-speed rail network. So is India's bullet train a waste of money? The honest answer is nobody knows yet, because the success of the project will not be decided when the first train starts running. It will be decided years later, when we see whether it creates economic growth, new opportunities, technological expertise, and stronger connectivity. If it does, people may eventually call it visionary. If it doesn't, people may call it a mistake. But one thing is certain, India's bullet train is not just a transportation project, it is a bet on the future. And like every big bet, its true value will only be known with time. History is full of projects that looked expensive before they looked brilliant. The question is, will India's bullet train become one of them? I hope you learned something new from this video. If you enjoy this kind of smart business and industry breakdowns, make sure to subscribe and hype the video so that it reaches to more people and you can watch this video next. I will see you in the next one. Till then, bye.